One, a rebellious dancer who rose from the poor neighborhoods of Detroit. The other, a child star from Gary, Indiana. One, the queen of provocation. The other, the king of perfection. Madonna and Michael Jackson, music history's greatest rivalry, a story that began with hostility, continued with a strange friendship, and ultimately transformed into an endless mystery. If these kinds of stories catch your attention, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Where are you watching us from right now? Let us know in the comments below. They defined an era. Two unparalleled forces who simultaneously ruled the musical landscape of the 1980s and early 1990s, reshaping pop culture in their own distinct images. Michael Jackson and Madonna, the king and queen of pop, occupied parallel thrones in the kingdom of music, their careers intertwining in ways both public and private, creating one of entertainment history's most fascinating and complex relationships. On the surface, their rivalry seems obvious and inevitable, two supremely ambitious artists competing for the same limited resource, the world's attention. Yet beneath this simple narrative lies a far more nuanced story of mutual admiration, artistic influence, personal connection, and at times, genuine animosity. Their relationship, spanning nearly 3 decades until Jackson's death in 2009, serves as a compelling lens through which to view not only their individual journeys but the evolution of pop music itself during one of its most transformative periods. To understand the full complexity of the Madonna-Jackson dynamic, we must first understand where they came from and how they arrived at their unprecedented levels of fame. Michael Jackson's story begins in the industrial town of Gary, Indiana, where he was born in 1958, the 8th of 10 children in a working-class family. His path to stardom began early. By age 6, he was already performing with his brothers in the Jackson 5, pushed relentlessly by his demanding father, Joseph. The group signed with Motown Records in 1969, and Michael quickly emerged as the standout talent, his supernatural performance abilities and emotional depth belying his young age. By the mid-1970s, Michael was transitioning to solo stardom, but it was 1982's Thriller that would catapult him beyond the stratosphere of conventional celebrity. With estimated sales exceeding 70 million copies worldwide, Thriller remains the best-selling album of all time, transforming Jackson from a star into a global phenomenon. Madonna Louise Cicconi's journey began in Bay City, Michigan, in 1958, coincidentally, the same year as Jackson's birth. Raised in the Detroit suburbs, she experienced early tragedy with the death of her mother when Madonna was just 5 years old. After briefly attending the University of Michigan on a dance scholarship, she dropped out and moved to New York City in 1978 with $35 in her pocket, determined to make it as a dancer. Her path to stardom was less direct than Jackson's. She worked as a backup dancer, formed several small bands, and eventually caught the attention of Sire Records, which signed her in 1982. Her self-titled debut album, released in 1983, produced several dance hits, but it was 1984's Like a Virgin that established her as a provocative cultural force and bona fide superstar. By the mid-1980s, both artists had achieved a level of fame that transcended music. They weren't just singers, they were cultural icons, style influencers, and multimedia entrepreneurs whose every move generated headlines. Their music videos weren't merely promotional tools but groundbreaking short films that reshaped the medium. Their fashion choices were immediately copied worldwide. Their personal lives became public obsessions. Yet despite occupying the same rarefied air of superstardom, Jackson and Madonna had remarkably little direct interaction during the early years of their parallel ascents. Their first significant encounter didn't occur until 1991 at the Academy Awards, an event we'll explore in depth later. This absence of connection despite their shared status points to the fundamental differences in their approaches to both art and fame. Jackson was intensely private, increasingly reclusive, and dedicated to projecting an image of perfection. Madonna was provocatively public, intentionally controversial, and committed to constantly reinventing her image. These contrasting approaches would define much of their relationship, and their rivalry, in the years to come. The earliest phase of their relationship wasn't personal but comparative. the inevitable result of being the two biggest pop stars on the planet simultaneously. The press constantly pitted them against each other, comparing album sales, concert revenues, and cultural impact. These comparisons weren't arbitrary, both artists were consciously competing for the same crown. "I said to Michael, I'm really interested in your job," Madonna recalled in a 1991 interview with Vanity Fair. "And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're the king of pop, and I think I'm the queen. I want to rule the world the way you do." This competitive dynamic extended beyond mere sales figures to the fundamental currency of 1980s pop music, MTV. The fledgling cable network, launched in 1981, had transformed the music industry, creating a visual component to pop stardom that hadn't previously existed on such a scale. Both Jackson and Madonna mastered this new medium with very different approaches. Jackson's videos were elaborate, expensive productions that showcased his otherworldly dancing and created immersive narrative experiences. Madonna's videos were provocative, boundary-pushing statements that challenged societal norms around gender and sexuality. Both approaches proved equally effective at capturing audience attention, though Jackson initially held the edge in terms of budgets and production values. The comparative phase of their relationship reached its peak in the late 1980s, when both artists released what many consider their definitive albums, Jackson's Bad in 1987 and Madonna's Like a Prayer in 1989. These releases represented the height of their powers and their divergent artistic visions. Bad was a meticulous continuation and refinement of the Thriller formula, impeccably produced pop songs with universal appeal and virtually no controversial content. Like a Prayer, conversely, deliberately courted controversy with its exploration of religious and sexual themes, most notably in its title track's music video, which featured Madonna experiencing stigmata and kissing a black saint. The critical and commercial reception to these albums highlighted the different expectations placed on each artist. Jackson's Bad, despite selling over 35 million copies worldwide and producing 5 consecutive #1 singles, a record that still stands, was considered something of a disappointment simply because it didn't match the unprecedented success of Thriller. Madonna's Like a Prayer, while certainly a commercial success with around 15 million copies sold, was praised more for its artistic boldness and cultural impact than its sales figures. This discrepancy in expectations would become a recurring theme in the Jackson-Madonna dynamic. He was judged primarily on commercial performance, while she was increasingly evaluated on artistic evolution and cultural relevance. Their different approaches to controversy were particularly telling. Jackson largely avoided it, preferring to maintain a universally appealing image that wouldn't alienate any potential fans. Madonna deliberately embraced controversy as a marketing strategy and artistic statement, understanding that provocation generated attention and discussion. This fundamental difference extended to their handling of personal matters as well. Jackson became increasingly private about his personal life as his fame grew, rarely giving interviews and carefully controlling his public image. Madonna took the opposite approach, strategically revealing aspects of her personal life to maintain public interest while still controlling the narrative. The contrast was perhaps most evident in their approaches to sexuality. Jackson presented an almost asexual public persona, while Madonna made sexuality central to her image and art. This difference would later become a point of fascination for Madonna, who frequently commented on Jackson's apparent sexual innocence in interviews. "He's very shy, very childlike," Madonna told Vanity Fair in 1991. "He doesn't really seem to be a man in some ways. At least not in the way that I think of men." Despite these profound differences in artistic approach and public persona, behind the scenes, Madonna and Jackson shared a deep mutual curiosity. Both were keenly aware of the other's career moves, watching each other's videos and following each other's commercial performance closely. According to those close to both stars, this awareness sometimes veered into genuine rivalry. Madonna was reportedly envious of Jackson's seemingly effortless musical genius and his unprecedented commercial success. Jackson, meanwhile, was fascinated by Madonna's ability to constantly reinvent herself and maintain cultural relevance through controversy. This period of parallel success and implicit rivalry set the stage for their most significant public interaction, the 1991 Academy Awards. The event would mark a turning point in their relationship, moving them from distant competitors to direct acquaintances with a complex personal dynamic. The 63rd Academy Award ceremony on March 25, 1991, provided the setting for what would become an iconic moment in pop culture history. Madonna, at the height of her Blonde Ambition era fame, attended the ceremony as the date of Michael Jackson, creating one of the most photographed and discussed celebrity pairings of the decade. The backstory of this date remains somewhat mysterious, with conflicting accounts of how it came to be. According to Madonna's friend Debbie Mazar, who accompanied them that night, the pairing was Madonna's idea. She called him up, Mazar recalled in a later interview. Madonna was always one to make a statement, and what bigger statement than going with Michael Jackson? Other accounts suggest it was Jackson who initiated the invitation, perhaps seeing an opportunity to generate positive publicity at a time when he was beginning work on his Dangerous album. Whatever the truth, the date accomplished its purpose. The images of pop's king and queen arriving together dominated entertainment news for weeks. The visual contrast between them that night was striking. Jackson wore one of his trademark military-style jackets with gold embellishments, while Madonna channeled Marilyn Monroe in a white sequined Bob Mackie gown, complete with $20 million worth of Harry Winston diamonds. They appeared as almost opposing archetypes, the reserved, elegant king and the flamboyant, provocative queen. According to witnesses, their interaction throughout the evening was awkward but friendly. They were like two aliens who had landed on the same planet but weren't quite sure what to make of each other, recalled one Academy attendee who sat near them. There was a palpable fascination between them, but also a discomfort. The evening produced several memorable moments, including Madonna playfully grabbing Jackson's hand during the ceremony, a gesture that seemed to momentarily fluster him, and their joint appearance at the Spago restaurant for the post-Oscars Swiftie Lazar party, where they were mobbed by photographers and fellow celebrities alike. The aftermath of their Oscar date revealed the fundamental difference in how they approached publicity. Madonna spoke openly about the evening in subsequent interviews, sharing anecdotes and her impressions of Jackson. "He was holding my hand and we were about to walk down all those stairs," she told Vanity Fair. "And I was like, you don't have to hold my hand. I can handle this myself." But he was very nervous. "I felt like he was a kid." Jackson, characteristically, said almost nothing publicly about the evening, maintaining his usual privacy. This difference in their willingness to discuss their personal interaction would become another recurring theme in their relationship. The Oscar date opened the door to a more direct relationship between the two superstars, one that would evolve through the 1990s into what might best be described as a cautious friendship. According to several sources, including Jackson's former security team and Madonna's circle of friends, the two began speaking occasionally by phone and even met privately several times over the next few years. One particularly intriguing meeting reportedly occurred at Neverland Ranch, Jackson's 2,700-acre estate in Santa Barbara County, California. Madonna visited the property in the early 1990s, touring Jackson's private amusement park, zoo, and movie theater. According to those present, the meeting was cordial but slightly awkward, with both stars seeming fascinated by the other while struggling to find common conversational ground. "They were like two people from different planets trying to communicate," recalled one staff member who was present that day. Michael wanted to show her his exotic animals, and Madonna wanted to talk about art and books. They were both trying, but they just had such different interests. Despite these differences, the relationship contained elements of genuine mutual respect and even admiration. Jackson reportedly admired Madonna's business acumen and her ability to constantly evolve while remaining commercially relevant. Madonna, meanwhile, was fascinated by Jackson's musical genius and his ability to create universally appealing pop music without compromising its artistic quality. This period of cautious friendship coincided with significant career developments for both artists. Jackson released Dangerous in 1991, an album that saw him incorporating new jack swing elements into his sound while maintaining his commercial appeal. Madonna released Erotica in 1992 and her controversial Sex book the same year, pushing the boundaries of sexual explicitness in mainstream entertainment. These simultaneous releases highlighted once again their different approaches to art and fame. Jackson was evolving his sound while maintaining his family-friendly image. Madonna was deliberately pushing boundaries and courting controversy. Yet both strategies proved effective. Dangerous sold over 32 million copies worldwide, while Erotica sold over 6 million despite, or perhaps because of, its controversial nature. The early 1990s also saw both artists dealing with the challenges of unprecedented fame, albeit in very different ways. Jackson increasingly retreated from public life, creating Neverland Ranch as a private fantasy world where he could escape the pressures of celebrity. Madonna, conversely, seemed to thrive on public attention, strategically using controversy to maintain her cultural relevance. These different approaches to fame created another layer of fascination between them. According to those who knew both stars, each was curious about the other's strategy for handling celebrity. Jackson couldn't comprehend Madonna's comfort with controversy and public scrutiny. Madonna was puzzled by Jackson's increasing reclusiveness and apparent discomfort with adult sexuality. Their relationship took a more complicated turn in the mid-1990s, as Jackson faced the first of his serious legal troubles, allegations of child sexual abuse that emerged in 1993. Though the case was settled out of court with no admission of wrongdoing, the scandal dramatically altered Jackson's public image and career trajectory. Madonna's response to these allegations reveals the complexity of their relationship. Publicly, she was one of the few major celebrities to explicitly defend Jackson. "I think people are innocently guilty until proven innocent," she told British television in a 1995 interview. "I think that's pretty discriminatory. I think people should be up in arms about it." This public defense, at a time when many of Jackson's former celebrity friends had distanced themselves, suggested a genuine personal connection between the two stars. Yet privately, according to sources close to Madonna, she had questions and concerns about the allegations, creating an ambivalence that characterized their relationship during this difficult period. The mid to late 1990s saw both artists at creative and commercial crossroads. Jackson released History in 1995, which performed well but showed signs that his commercial dominance was beginning to wane. Madonna released Ray of Light in 1998, a critical triumph that reinvented her image once again and won her a new generation of fans. Their career trajectories during this period created a shifting dynamic in their rivalry. While Jackson had been the undisputed commercial champion during the 1980s, by the late 1990s, Madonna's strategy of constant reinvention seemed to be proving more sustainable. Jackson still sold millions of records, but his cultural relevance was increasingly tied to his personal troubles rather than his artistic output. This shift was reflected in their rare public comments about each other during this period. Jackson, when asked about Madonna in a 1999 interview, was polite but non-committal. "She's a hard-working lady and she's very talented." Madonna, in contrast, became increasingly candid in her assessments of Jackson, mixing expressions of admiration with critical observations. In a 1997 interview with The Face magazine, Madonna said, "Poor Michael Jackson. I feel sorry for him. I think he doesn't know what to do with himself as an adult. It must be very painful. But I can't really make excuses for people's bizarre behavior." This comment exemplifies the complex mix of empathy, criticism, and fascination that characterized Madonna's view of Jackson during this period. She seemed genuinely concerned about his well-being while simultaneously distancing herself from his increasingly eccentric public persona. The early 2000s marked a period of further divergence in their careers and lives. Madonna continued her pattern of successful reinvention with albums like Music, 2000, and Confessions on a Dance Floor, 2005, maintaining her cultural relevance while evolving as an artist. Jackson released Invincible in 2001, which, despite selling around 10 million copies worldwide, was considered a commercial disappointment by his previous standards. More significantly, Jackson faced a second round of child sexual abuse allegations in 2003, leading to a highly publicized trial in 2005. Though he was acquitted on all counts, the ordeal took an enormous toll on his health, finances, and public image. During this period, Madonna maintained a public silence about Jackson's troubles, neither defending nor criticizing him, a notable change from her previous supportive stance. According to sources close to both stars, direct contact between them became increasingly rare during this period, though they maintained an awareness of each other's careers and lives. The relationship had evolved into something more distant, less a friendship or rivalry than a complex shared history between two people who had experienced a level of fame few others could comprehend. The final chapter of their relationship came with Jackson's death on June 25, 2009, at the age of 50. Madonna's response revealed the depth of connection she felt despite their complicated history. In a statement released shortly after his death, she said, "I can't stop crying over the sad news. The world has lost one of the greats, but his music will live on forever. My children are constantly playing his music. This is all so devastating and sad." In the months that followed, Madonna spoke more extensively about her relationship with Jackson, offering insights that helped clarify the nature of their connection. During a performance in London just days after Jackson's death, she delivered an emotional tribute. "He was one of the greatest talents the world has ever known. I had the honor of working with him and knowing him. He was one of the sweetest, most gentle people I've ever met." This characterization of Jackson as sweet and gentle echoed Madonna's consistent portrayal of him throughout their relationship, as someone almost childlike in his innocence, despite his musical genius. It suggested a protective, almost maternal aspect to her feelings toward him, despite their rivalry and occasional criticisms. Madonna elaborated on their relationship in a Rolling Stone interview later that year, revealing, "We had dinner together at the Ivy in Beverly Hills, we shared a booth. We had more in common than people would think. We didn't really talk about our work, oddly enough, we talked about life." She also addressed the competitive aspect of their relationship. "There was a rivalry there, but it was always in a nice way. I always felt that we understood each other. We were comrades in arms." These post-mortem reflections offered perhaps the clearest window into the true nature of the Madonna-Jackson relationship, a complex connection between two unprecedented talents who, despite their profound differences, shared the unique experience of defining a musical era and reshaping pop culture in their own images. Looking back on their parallel careers, several patterns emerge that illuminate both their rivalry and their connection. First, there's the striking synchronicity of their commercial peaks. Jackson's Thriller, released in 1982, was followed by Madonna's breakthrough Like a Virgin in 1984. His Bad in 1987 was followed by her Like a Prayer in 1989. His Dangerous in 1991 was followed by her Erotica in 1992. This pattern created a natural comparison and competition, with each artist responding to and building upon the other's success. Second, there's the contrast in their artistic evolution. Jackson's approach was one of refinement, perfecting a signature sound and image that remained relatively consistent throughout his career, despite incorporating new musical elements. Madonna's approach was one of reinvention, deliberately transforming her sound and image with each project, sometimes at the risk of alienating existing fans. Both approaches proved enormously successful but led to different career trajectories and longevity. Third, there's the fundamental difference in how they engaged with controversy. Jackson avoided it whenever possible, understanding that his commercial dominance required maintaining the broadest possible appeal. Madonna embraced it as a strategy, recognizing that provocative art and behavior generated the cultural conversation that sustained her relevance. This difference became increasingly significant as their careers progressed, particularly in the 1990s and 2000s. Beyond these professional patterns, their personal interaction reveals another layer of complexity. By all accounts, their relationship contained elements of genuine warmth and connection alongside competitive tension and occasional criticism. They were neither close friends nor genuine rivals, but something more nuanced, two extraordinary talents navigating the unprecedented terrain of global superstardom, occasionally looking to each other for understanding or validation. I think they recognized something in each other that almost no one else could understand, reflected music producer Jimmy Jam, who worked with both artists. The pressure, the scrutiny, the expectations, they were both dealing with that on a level that was completely unique. That created a bond, even if they weren't always comfortable with each other. This bond was complicated by their profound differences in personality and approach. Jackson was intensely private, increasingly isolated, and deeply sensitive to criticism. Madonna was strategically public, surrounded by a carefully curated social circle, and seemingly impervious to negative press. These contrasting temperaments made sustained friendship difficult while adding another dimension to their professional rivalry. Their relationship also reflected broader cultural conversations about race, gender, and sexuality during the 1980s and 1990s. Jackson's evolution as a black artist achieving unprecedented crossover success coincided with Madonna's emergence as a female artist asserting unprecedented control over her image and sexuality. Both were boundary breakers in their own ways, challenging existing limitations for artists of their respective backgrounds. The Jackson-Madonna dynamic also illuminates changing definitions of pop music success over the 3 decades they dominated the industry. In the 1980s, success was measured primarily in album sales and chart positions, metrics that favored Jackson's universal appeal. By the 2000s, critical acclaim and cultural impact had become equally important measures, areas where Madonna's artistic risk-taking often gave her an edge. Their careers collectively trace this evolution in how pop stardom is defined and evaluated. Perhaps most significantly, their relationship offers a unique window into the psychological experience of unprecedented fame. Both achieved a level of celebrity that transcended normal parameters, creating an isolation and pressure that few others could comprehend. Their different responses to this pressure, Jackson's retreat into privacy and fantasy, Madonna's strategic provocation and reinvention, represent contrasting but equally understandable strategies for coping with the weight of global adoration and scrutiny. In the years since Jackson's death, Madonna has continued to reference him in ways that suggest his ongoing influence on her thinking about fame, art, and legacy. During her 2012 MDNA tour, she included a brief tribute to Jackson in her performances. In interviews promoting her 2015 album, Rebel Heart, she drew explicit comparisons between their experiences as pop icons. "Michael and I were the people everyone was talking about in the 80s and early 90s, she told The New York Times. We were the ones pushing the envelope. But he didn't want to take responsibility for the fact that he was pushing the envelope. I think he was never comfortable with being the outsider, but I was always comfortable with it." This observation captures a fundamental insight about their different approaches to fame. Madonna embraced the role of provocateur and outsider, while Jackson sought universal acceptance despite his boundary-pushing artistry. It also reveals Madonna's continued effort to make sense of their complex relationship and shared historical significance. As time passes and the cultural impact of both artists continues to be assessed, the Madonna-Jackson relationship increasingly appears as one of the most significant artistic dynamics of the late 20th century. Their parallel careers not only defined an era of pop music but also reflected broader cultural shifts around celebrity, identity, and artistic expression. Their rivalry, sometimes explicit, sometimes implicit, pushed both to greater creative heights. Jackson's unmatched commercial success challenged Madonna to create more accessible music while maintaining her provocative edge. Madonna's constant reinvention and cultural relevance challenged Jackson to evolve beyond his established formula while preserving his core artistic identity. Beyond the professional competition, their personal connection, with all its complications and contradictions, humanizes two figures often reduced to caricature or icon status. Their fascination with each other, their occasional meetings and phone calls, their public comments ranging from praise to criticism, all reveal the complex humans behind the carefully constructed public images. In the final analysis, the Madonna-Jackson relationship defies simple categorization. They were rivals but not enemies, friends but not intimates, collaborators in redefining pop stardom while taking dramatically different paths to that shared achievement. Their connection was ultimately defined by a profound mutual recognition, an understanding that despite their differences, they shared an experience of fame and artistic impact that only the other could truly comprehend. Madonna herself perhaps best summed up this complex dynamic in her 2009 tribute to Jackson, "There will never be another one like him. He was too unique, too rare." Coming from an artist who built her career on asserting her own uniqueness, this acknowledgement of Jackson's singularity represents perhaps the most genuine tribute one icon could offer another. The story of Madonna and Michael Jackson, the Queen and King of Pop, is not merely about two extraordinary careers that happened to coincide. It's about the complex human relationship that developed between two artists who, despite their profound differences, shared the rarefied experience of defining an era. Their rivalry, friendship, and mutual fascination created a dynamic that enriched both their legacies and continues to illuminate the nature of fame, art, and human connection at the highest levels of cultural impact. One from Detroit, one from Gary. The provocateur and the perfectionist. The relationship between Madonna and Michael Jackson remains one of music history's most fascinating studies in contrast, competition, and unlikely connection, a complex dance between two revolutionary artists who, together and separately, rewrote the rules of pop stardom for generations to come.